energy are we putting out there to the world? Is that congruent with who we really are? And why? Because if you want to influence out here, you've got to go through here, and it's got to come from here.
Please join me welcoming AJ.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Hola! Namaste. Konnichiwa. Or as we say in my home country, g'day. Thank you so much for having me here. It is an incredible honor to serve the people that look after the future of work, which is all of you. And I was just telling a few people I've never met a more engaged audience. So thank you so much for playing all out all day. The closing keynote session is, the last session. And as the closing keynote speaker, I only have one job. And that is, unfortunately, it's not to help you move to drinks as quickly as possible. It's actually to help you implement some of the learnings that you took away from today. Have you learned something useful from today? Anyone? Yeah? Beautiful. So my job, no pressure, is to help you implement it. So when you go back to work, you can actually start to implement these ideas that you've got. Now, I'm sure, I've been watching all the speakers today, and there's some really great ideas out there. And for my work, what I do as a business strategist is I'm required to take a whole bunch of information and distill it in a way to make it useful for people so that they can implement it. And one of the things I'd like to share with you before we get to the main event is sort of like a secret technique that I use to help me distill information and make it useful. So I want to share that with you all today. And that is through the power of questions. Questions are incredibly powerful tools for information, and most people might not realize just how powerful they are. I use questions in 8 different ways. Most people use questions in 2 obvious ways. The first one is seek information. What's the weather like? The second one is instruct others. Can you please do this? Which is interesting because when you think about it, this is how we kind of already interact with the generative AI tools that we play with today. 2 sorts of questions. But as Caroline said, we can play deeper with these tools and really reimagine the world of work. So most people, going back to the first one, seek information, what I find is that most people use what I call $2 questions. There's those low-value questions that actually, sometimes if you're really under pressure and someone asks you a $2 question, you might feel a bit, this is a waste of my time, right? So I'd like you to challenge yourselves and come up with elevated thinking, elevated questions, or as I like to call it, one big question. So what I'd like you to do now at your tables is discuss amongst yourselves and pair up with a person. And for those of you who have odd number tables, you might want to get into a bit of a menage a trois situation. Yep, I'm going there. It's the last session of the day. So so discuss amongst yourselves. And what I'd like you to do is come up with one big question. And that question is, you're going to take that question back to your organization on Monday. Wait, maybe Thursday. I've forgotten what day it is. And then, you're going to use the information you learned today, one little aspect of the information that you learned today, to answer that question. So discuss amongst yourselves right now. I'll give you a couple of minutes and come up with one big question. I'll give you 2 minutes. Go. Who heard a really interesting question? Anyone heard a really interesting question? Raise your hand. Yep. Ah! Okay, cool. What does AI look like at their company? That's a really good question. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Up the back. Just yell it out. Anyone? Yes. How do we actually move the dial for organizations and DEI? Now that is definitely not a $2 question. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Just yell it out. It's that time of day. Let's go.
How can AI be the next member of our team?
Oh, that's beautiful. How can AI be the next member of their team? That's a beautiful, definitely not a $2 question here. One more. Yell it out.
What is our preferred future?
What is our preferred future? Oh, fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you all out for playing. So when you go back to your workplaces, please take your one big question. Discuss it with your team and really implement it using the information you learned today. And that is the power of questions. So let's move on to the main event. Okay, so this talk started out as a bit of a joke last year. I got booked with a group, an amazing group of cybersecurity professionals, very different audience to all of you today. And they're just fantastic people, and you are all custodians of the world of work. They're custodians of keeping us all safe from digital nasties. So very interesting audience. And one of the guys asked me to speak to their boot camp, their emerging leader program. And I got all excited because my background's innovation, creativity. So I was thinking, yeah, we could do something really awesome with their leaders, to help them to think differently. Or maybe I could teach them how to solve problems rapidly and advance their future of work, and it'd be great. And they didn't want any of that. They wanted to talk on personal branding. And my ego did take a bit of a hit, and I was complaining to a friend of mine. I said, mate, they only want me for this. I can do so much, but they only want me for this. And I don't know anything about personal branding. And he said the most profound thing to me. He said, what are you talking about? You know all about personal branding. You just don't call it that. And that moment I realized my mistake. I was looking at this topic from a very narrow lens, the lens of the dude bros on the Instablar pimping Bizcoin or whatever the hell they're doing. That to me is personal branding. And then what my friend said to me was, as a professional speaker, I probably know a lot about the underlying sentiment of personal branding, which is impact and influence. And I've got 10 years of speaking in the craft of learning these tools of influence that I'm about to share with you. And so then began this journey to figure out, well, what could I actually take? What could I find? What could I research? What could I distill to help anyone that's interested in impacting and influence the world of work? As Julie said, we are all facing enormous challenges. The future, I love what Rihanna said about the future, is that you never actually achieve it. Have you tried to chase something that you never actually achieve? It's exhausting. It's my daily life, right? So I want to share with you some techniques and some principles. And when I did the research for this, I clocked up about 86 hours in doing the research and distilling the information. So I hope that you get something useful out of this presentation, so I don't have to refund anyone. But so what's really interesting is when you look at the history of branding, it actually translates into the word mark in all these different languages. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Why is that? And then I started thinking about the history of branding. Because right at the start, 3700 BC, brands, making your mark used to be on wax seals so that when you got a letter, it was actually from the king's court, not from some scammer in another country, right? Then that evolved into 2700 BC, which was about branding cattle, so whose livestock belongs to who. Right? And then, of course, more modern branding, visual branding. So, for instance, if I draw a corporate logo, what corporate logo is that? What company? Isn't that interesting? One gesture, didn't even say the name, but you all knew, right? That's incredible. Then we evolved into sonic branding. So if I play the sound, Thomas, you got me? Thomas on the decks, people. Give him a big round of applause today. He's been back there. Thank you, Thomas. All right, so if I play this noise, what company is this? Isn't that interesting, right? Now, what's perhaps is most interesting about all this stuff is we all have visual marks, we all have sonic marks, our voice. And so I want to share with you how you can use and develop your own marks to impact and influence the world of work. Now, in order to do that, I'm actually going to share with you, why is this important for all of you? We spoke about a lot of trends. Something I didn't hear or I might have missed, I don't know if it's covered, and if it was covered, I do apologize. For all of you, something that's really sort of impacting my world and everyone's world, and it's not really spoken about, is this shift in trust. So we are now seeing a redistribution of trust from traditional sources of trust, which is your business, government, your media. They're the traditional institutions. And this is being eroded over time to be redistributed for peer-to-peer trust. Okay, so in other words, instead of learning from traditional institutions or being impacted and influenced by messages from traditional institutions, we're actually learning from peers. And this data comes from the Edelman Trust Survey. it is probably the most comprehensive data point that we've got on the world of trust. And it's a massive decline over the years. And you might be thinking, well, what's causing this decline? Well, the other side of the coin is how we're now getting our messages. And this is data from Deloitte. And you'll notice that this is consumption of digital media. And Deloitte says that on average, us Aussies consume around 44 hours worth of digital media entertainment. 44 hours a week, which equates out to 6 hours a day. Now, between you and me, personally, I think if no one's actually telling them the actual amount of hours they spend on their devices, right? So it's a data point, but take it with a bag of salt or whatever. Anyway, so this is really interesting. Now, we're seeing this shift, right? And what's really interesting is that now what it turns out that if you actually want to influence the world of work out here, you actually have to go through here. In order to cut through here, it needs to come from here. And so, I have a quick story about this. Where's Sharon? Sharon. Yeah, Sharon. I told you I'd use this story. Not the way that you wanted me to use it, right? Sharon deployed a survey inside her organization. It was about DEI. No, psychological safety. Sorry, psychological safety, right? She deployed the survey. And the survey went a little bit too good, if you know what I mean. Everyone wanted to get involved, right? And so she deployed the survey, got the results, and then the HSR people heard about this, and now they actually want to access the data because it was a very comprehensive survey. So they want access to this data, and now Sharon's going to have to navigate that conflict. The reason why I share this with you is Sharon deployed it via this. Previously, we used to print out pieces of paper, send it around, or perhaps an email. So this is now becoming a tool of influence. And I encourage you all to think about how you can use these devices, which used to be passive screens. You know, when you go to a cinema or watch a TV, it used to be a passive screen, you can't interact with it, but now these are active screens. Even the whole day today, what is every, not the speakers, but the host asked you to do after every session? Rate the speaker. Feel free to give me a good rating, all right? Yeah, I'll pimp myself, it's the last session of the day. So these tools can be used for a variety of things. You just have to reimagine the way things could be done, which is very exciting. So what I want to do now is share with you some principles of influence. And I call them principles, not five-step process to building a personal brand or five-step process of doing trusted leadership or whatever. Principles come from something I learned the hard way in my career as a professional speaker. So when you're coming up through the ranks, you start off without any knowledge, you just have this cool ambition, like, I want to speak on stage, And then you start to learn how the game actually works. And it's not that great, but most of us push through it and we end up on stages like this. And very early on, what I would do is to gain knowledge, I'd go speak to other accomplished speakers. And I'd ask them, hey, tell me what you did. And everyone in that community is so generous with their information, their time and energy. So I would absorb it like a sponge and then I'd implement. And then the results I would get would be completely different to what they got. And it took me a very long time, and most of you might realize this yourself, but it took me a long time to realize it, is that they're implementing something based on their own circumstances. I'm trying to take that lesson and implement it exactly the same way based on my circumstances, which is completely different. So what I learned early in my career was to actually just, look, don't take the lesson, take the principles and apply it to different circumstances. So that's why this isn't a five-step process. It's actually 3 principles that I hope will impact and influence you enough to shift your thinking on how you can influence the world of work. And no lie, the pressure is on. Rihanna said something really interesting. She said, tiny influences, is that what she said? All of you? Tiny architects, yeah. That's all of you. That's exciting. All right, so here we go. First principle. The framework is the TLC Framework. It stands for Think, Look, Communicate. Now, the first bit is the think part. And I want you to think about something that you probably haven't thought of before. And look, this is, when I learnt this, it's one of these brutal lessons that I learnt the hard way, and I want to share it with you. But it is a principle. It's not everyone's principle, but it's a data point, right? So I want you to think about what I call the point of impact. And the point of impact is a very specific thing where time and space converge into a very specific moment. And in that moment, a person has to make a decision, or people need to make a decision. And in that moment, nothing else matters except for one thing. A person will make a decision congruent to their identity. A person will make a decision congruent to their identity. Now, what forms a person's identity? There's two things. First of all, it's your lived experiences. They shape who we are, whether or not we like it or not. They shape who we are. So lived experiences. The second part is the stories that we hear. We are influenced by the stories that we hear. And if it's a great story, what happens is it turns into a lived experience and it becomes part of who we are. This also explains why in the 1980s we had so many guys getting into fights after watching Rocky. Hey, Adrian! So think about the point of impact, right? The session before, I think Teresa said something about data is sexy. I'll tell you what's even sexier, storytelling using data. That way you hit the logic, you hit the heart. Because if you want to influence out here, it's got to come from here, and it's got to come from in here. So take the data and turn it into stories. I ran a workshop a few months ago where it was really interesting. It was about how to tell strategic stories, and the whole thing was, we have data all the time. And there's one gentleman who, like, as soon as I said this, he literally slapped himself in the head, and I thought, oh my God, are you okay? And he said, I just realized I've been telling the wrong stories. So he works for a community organization that have stakeholders. They're the people that inject money into the organization. He shares all sorts of data with them, never shares data with his own team. It's the little things that help you implement these principles. So if you're trying to impact and influence everyone, a key question for you is, what is happening at the point of impact? That's the moment where you need someone to make a decision. I want you to think about what is actually happening in that moment of space and time. Who is the person making the decision? Who are they really? You know, we speak about a shift in the world of work. Two shifts happening at the moment, all the global redundancies. A lot of my ex-colleagues in tech have all lost their job, right? And that's because the people in those organizations are operating from a different identity. Even with DEI, that's really shifted too, and that's because the people there are operating on different identity. And part of the animosity around that change is coming from a lot of people are discovering that others aren't who they thought they were. And that hits you here. But like I said, if you want to influence out here, you've got to use this thing and come from here. So that's the first principle. The second principle is look. And this relates to footprints, perception of footprints. You've got your digital footprint and your physical footprint. Now, before I get into this, I want to share with you another brutal truth. And this is, again, learned from the world of speaking that I was used to. When you start off as a speaker, one of the things they tell you in circles is that you've got to partner with a bureau, because a bureau will help you amplify, and it changes the life of you as a speaker. And so I was like, okay, I need to get a bureau, right? And one of the things they tell you is that speaker bureaus are always looking for fresh ideas and fresh content. And if you take a look at me and my work, I'm as fresh as they come, you know? Like, I do not resemble the sea of sameness that we see at most conferences. So I would go to these bureaus and say, hey, I've got a new idea that's really going to revolutionize the speaking world, and it's going to be fantastic. And they're like, okay, cool, yeah, we'll get back to you. They never did. Or I'll send them my materials. They never got back to me. And what I realized the hard way, and no one really told me, is that even though we want change, we want to drive change, something more powerful underneath that is people don't want to get fired. So you go to a person with a great idea that's going to revolutionize. If they don't believe in that idea the same way you do, they're going to think it's a risky idea, and they'll be less inclined to support that idea. Some of you might be facing this already inside your organizations when you're trying to drive change with a leader that's purely focused on business and not necessarily humans. So you might be feeling that disconnect. And so this is why it's important when you develop your footprint, you have to be almost like perceived as a safe, trusted choice. Now, this works from a psychological way. There's a theory called the loss aversion theory. We as human beings are wired up in such a way where instead of the gains, we focus on protecting stuff that we already have. We don't want to lose it, so we protect it more than the potential gains, right? Loss aversion theory. And so when you develop your footprint, you have to become that trusted advisor so that whatever you come up with people, it's almost like, okay, I trust this person. They're a safe choice for me to listen to them. Okay, let me go deeper into this, the two footprints, then this will all make sense. Okay, your physical footprint. That is basically, your looks, okay? Not just the way you dress or your hair and your makeup or anything like that, but more so, how do you show up, right? What sort of a space do you take up around you, right? Someone that's not very confident will naturally have a littler space to take up. Someone that's overconfident runs the whole table, right? We see this everywhere in organizations. So I'd like you to challenge yourself and sort of do a personal audit and think about, well, okay, what space do I take up? And if you do take up a little bit of space, try just expanding it a little bit more and just become comfortable with your space. If you see anyone confident, and I say confident, not overconfident, they take up enough space and they just have this commanding presence, It's pretty interesting and you just want to listen to them. So that's what they're doing. Also, I love seeing traditional corporate speakers when you'll never see a traditional corporate CEO do this. They'll never raise their arms above their shoulders. It's fascinating. So they'll be talking about, we're experiencing a very big change. How big? Really big. They don't use the gestures, right? I encourage you to play with your space, play with your gestures, make them bigger. For an audience like this, I'm making big gestures so you see me right up the back, right? In one-on-one, if I start doing big gestures in front of you, you're going to feel like, oh, this guy's not safe, delete, So that's part of it. The other thing about your physical footprint is your voice. Remember how every one of you knew what sound that was, right? So your voice is like your instrument, right? What sort of a voice do you have? Do you have a high-pitched voice? Do you talk like this all the time? Or do you sort of talk like this, where you should have your own late-night radio show? What's your pace like? Do you talk really fast so that people really struggle to understand you? Or do you talk really slow, like you're thinking about what you're going to say? Neither of them is wrong, but there's a place. And if you've noticed, I've done all of these different dimensions with you here today. And it just makes you more engaging to listen to. Some of you might have a monotonous voice, one note. I encourage you to play with it. So this is where it's starting to feel really awkward now because they're like, oh God, how much space do I take up? And what does my voice sound like? Please play with it. Play with it. There is no right or wrong answer. We crave authenticity, but we also support conformity. So for instance, something really simple with the CISO group that I worked with, I kept asking them, their biggest challenge was how do we get from where we're at to the C-suite, right? And the lesson I had for them, or the principle I had for them was that, well, do you look like the C-suite? Because if you look very different to the C-suite, not just physical looks, but the way you speak, the way in space you take up, right? If you don't, we're humans, we're tribal creatures, right? If you don't resemble the tribe, you're going to have an uphill battle to get trusted, okay? So it's important to take in aspects of all this stuff. Another thing is energy, right? What sort of energy are you giving out, right? Do you uplift people or do you bring them down? If I go to your workplace and you're not there, can I tell if you've been there? Will your team be like really upbeat or will they be like, hey, I'm on seek.com.au, You can tell when an individual's been somewhere simply by the energy they leave behind. All of us are beautiful, bright-minded human beings. What energy are we putting out there to the world? Is that congruent with who we really are? And why? Because if you want to influence out here, you've got to go through here, and it's got to come from here. Right? So that's your physical footprint. Digital footprint's a no-brainer. If I look you up, are you a ghost? Really simple, right? So many people contact me on LinkedIn. They don't leave messages, so I've got like hundreds of people looking at my profile wanting to message me. I have no idea what their intentions are. And my anxiety, through the roof, right? Because most people take, they don't give. A few of them match. I'm happy with matches, right? But I don't know what you want, so I will go and Google them. And if they're a ghost, I won't connect with them. And that's just me, but a few of you might be feeling the same way. And I've missed out on so many opportunities because of this velvet rope I have around me, but I'm at peace with that. So think about, what are you putting out there to the world that amplifies who you are as an individual? Are you contributing to the organization communications? Are you writing in their newsletter? Are you doing their podcast? ARIA's got a brilliant set of media that you can all contribute to as members. Is that right? Yeah, you can all contribute to it. And they are actually spotlighting members, because I get all their emails and I get all their feeds, right? They're doing a fantastic job trying to support the world of work. Why don't you contribute to that? Create a digital footprint. You know, write an article on LinkedIn. Say, I saw this crazy guy, AJ, and he said I needed to write a blog. Tag me in it, so I'll, comment and get it like that. But, it's really easy stuff that you can do, so that if someone looks up at you and goes, okay, I have a perception of this person, because where are we getting our perception of the world from? Right? So even before you walk into a room for a meeting or a job interview or anything, someone has probably already got a perception of you. Why wouldn't you want to show up as your best self? So think about your physical and your digital footprint. So a key question for you is, do I look trustworthy? Do I look like a safe choice? And this isn't purely about conformity. You don't have to, purely mold yourself into a mirror image of the people around you. The challenge is figuring out a way to conform, but still bring your unique self to it. And that is also a universal principle. I can't tell you what works for me. I can only give you the principles to help you figure it out yourself. And the beautiful thing about this community, and part of the reason why you're so engaging, is that you're all amazing humans that actually care. So if you're struggling with any of these stuff, the answers are probably in the room. Through networking drinks, go up and talk to people, ask them, hey, I'm struggling with this, can you help? Make these connections online, leverage the power of LinkedIn. And this is how we start to change the world of work. The last bit is communicate. This is about bringing people on the journey. You have to move people from where they're at, not where you're at. Move people from where they're at, not where you're at. I've got two quick stories for you. First one's entertaining, so you can take a breath and relax, right? The second one makes it contextual. All right, first story, here we go. Growing up, I had two beautiful, traditional Sri Lankan parents that were very strict. The type, they're the ones that don't bother coming home if you don't get an A. That type, right? To make matters worse, my dad was captain in the Sri Lankan army during a time when the British ruled Sri Lanka. So my childhood was boot camp. To make matters worse, he had this view of the world where academic excellence equates to life fulfillment. Which means if you studied hard, get good grades, you'll get a good job, attract a good person, have babies, and die. That is the Sri Lankan life, right? Now, the problem with that life, worked for centuries, for different cultures, the problem with that life is the first bit. If you don't have academic excellence, you get none of that, right? I didn't have academic excellence. So what's interesting for me is that my dad and I used to always have these big types of conflict, We used to butt heads all the time. And in fact, one time I was visiting my parents in my old childhood home, and I was staying in my old bedroom, and I wake up one day and I go to open the door, and the door's stuck. So I was jiggling the door, trying to get her open, and I snapped the handle. My dad comes running and says, "Oh my goodness, you've broken the handle. What have you done, you useless fellow? Now I'll have to call Shantaya to come and fix this." And in that moment I said, "Dad, you don't need to call Shantaya. I can fix this." Without batting an eyelid, my dad goes, You studied IT? How can you fix this?" Now, I could have taken that conversation in several different ways. I could have played, the really distraught child. "Father, you never give me opportunities. I just want to please you." Or I could have been the angry teenager. "Hey, why did you give me opportunities? All I do is respect you and I get disrespected in return. What the hell's that?" But in that moment, what came out of my mouth even surprised me. I said to my dad, "Okay, you don't believe I'm qualified to fix this. How about I teach you how to fix it and you can fix the door?" "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So we go to Bunnings, buy a door handle, come back, I teach him how to fix the door, and he fixes the door. Now that might seem really illogical, like, so stupid, right? But who is my dad? What's his identity? Do you remember? Army, right? He's during a time when the British ruled Sri Lanka. He's a leader of men. He's also a man, ego the size of Jupiter, right? So So he wants to be seen as a solutions provider. So instead of butting heads with him, I simply moved him where he was at, not where I was at. And we both achieved the mutual outcome. This is so important. The second story makes it contextual. I'm working with an organization right now. I'm coaching one of their managers to think differently about the challenges at work. And the other day he rings me up and he says, hey, I've had it with HR. I've had it with HR. I said, why? What's wrong? Oh, they're useless. Well, why are they useless? Well, they're hopeless. Like, that tells me the answer to my question. $2 questions, right? So then it turns out that he's experiencing something. And the way he was talking about HR made me realize, maybe that organization's gone the other way. Instead of being a business partner, maybe they've gone the other way for compliance, I rang up the head of, not the head of HR, but the head of learning and development of that organization. She's a good friend of mine. She's actually the reason why I'm here today. So thank you, Anita. She's not here. I'm just sending her love for the video, right? Anyway, so I said, thank you, Anita. And so I spoke to her and she explained to me what's actually going on. And she said, we are actually going further. We're leaning more into the business partner role. But because we have limited resources, we can't do everything for everyone. So we want to empower our leaders and help them to be self-sufficient. So we're there to support them, right? And then she said the most interesting thing. She said, we're running workshops on this, so there's no reason why this guy shouldn't be on the journey, right? Now, technically on paper, that makes sense, but there's a disconnect, okay? And that's because they're showing up with all these avenues of things, and it's meant to work, and it's not working. And so I am now coaching my client to help him adjust to this new way of doing things, when the organization really needs to, just something simple like check in with everyone. It's not a large organization, so they can actually check in and see who's not being supported. But this is kind of what you all might need to do if you're facing disconnect. Go that extra mile and really engage with people and, even take the criticism, right? And it's confronting. Like, to get to where I'm at as a speaker, the amount of criticism I've had, oh man, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The last gig I did at this very same venue, I got shot on stage, right? It was brutal. But hopefully, if you get something out of this today, I know that criticism helped me impact and influence others. So that's the theory there. Key question for you is, am I bringing people on the journey? Okay, it's Q&A time. And this is where I get to take a deep breath for a few minutes, and you get to take over my presentation. So what we're going to do is special Q&A. It's called Q&A on steroids. I just made that up. It'll work. It's the last session of the day. Let's run with it. So what we're going to do is, where you're at, what I want you to do is, at your tables, first job, pick a leader. Right? Pick a table leader, and I want that leader to stand up, or if you're not comfortable standing up, just make sure I see you. Raise your hand real quick. All right, go. Pick a leader at your table. All right. Here we go. We've got enough people playing. So what I want you to do, leaders, what I want you to do is ask your table what the one big question they would like to ask from me about everything we've spoken about today, which could be personal branding, trusted leadership, impact and influence. If you want me to tell some horror stories about speaking world, I'll put it on the table. We're going there. So anything that you want to know from me, ask your table and find out the questions. Now, we obviously don't have time for everyone. So what I'm going to do is probably pick 6, or actually, let's make it 7. Let's go 7, right? So 7 people, the first 7 people that stand up or put your hand up is going to get a question, all right? So let's play the game. Let's go. One big question. Go. All right, so what questions do you ask to understand where a person is at? Okay, 1, 2. Great. Wonderful. Thank you for doing my job. Yep.
Our question was, how do we empower our leaders to be self-sufficient?
How do you empower your leaders? Empower leaders to be self-sufficient. Cool. 3. What are the 8 types of questions? Oh my God, the pressure. Cool. How do you navigate as an introvert? That's you, Emma, isn't it? Emma? Yeah, cool. How do you navigate as an introvert? Okay, cool. Number 5, Sharon.
Number 2.
1, pick one. I'll come back to you. Up the back. Yep. Grow the most from a horror story. Okay. Where do I start? Okay, cool. Thank you. That is an entertaining. I'll close on that. Sharon.
How do you describe your current job to your parents now?
How do I describe my current job to my parents now? I'll start with that. Dad's dead. End of story. But before he died, we reached this beautiful place in our relationship. And last time I visited him, he looked at me with his beautiful eyes. And I'd never seen these eyes before. They give you great drugs in hospital. And in that moment, he said the most profound thing to me. He said, "Puta," which means son, "Puta, are you still talking to people?" Can't win them all, right? Mum doesn't fully understand what I do, but that's okay. I don't think, for those of you with kids, I don't think you fully need to understand exactly what they do and how they do it. It'll drive you insane. I know because I drove my parents insane, right? But I think if you look at who they are as real people, that's powerful. And if you are proud of who they are, you've done well. You've done really well. So to answer your question, I just say to the relatives, I just say, yeah, I'm talking to people, or they think I lecture at some sort of institution. Don't teach a pig to sing and waste your time and annoys the hell out of the pig, right? Done. Thank you for your question. I'll end on the horror story. How do you navigate as an introvert? Okay, here's an interesting question. How many of you, raise your hand, how many of you think I'm an extrovert? Cool. Thank you for your faith in this, right? I'm actually what's known as an outgoing introvert, which sounds really weird based on what I've done today. But my role is to help you, influence you, and impactful you, right? And if I were to do this in a different way, and these are creative choices that I can use. And I have done this before. I would run the session maybe a little bit quieter. And I'd run it like this. I'd still use the same gestures. I'd still use a big loud voice. I'd still use little things. But now I'm taking up a little bit more space because it's more intimate. But here's a trick. If I really want to impact and influence people and get them to go inside themselves, I'd go here. Because when I drop below the eye line, all of a sudden, you're not in here, you're in here. For those of you who can't see what I did, drop down, you're not in here, you're in here. So there's this one story. Today I'm closing in a certain way, but previously I used to tell this one story that's really impactful and influential, and it's amazing. And so what happened then was that I would drop down, tell the story, and people would be more reflective. It wouldn't translate to the feedback, so they say, "Oh, you made this thing 0." But yeah, so my data points for you is, remember how I said there are different ways of expressing yourself, okay? And you can make creative choices as to how you want to express yourself. But if you are naturally introverted, I encourage you, do a little bit more. So if you're not actually got a really loud voice, maybe change the tonality of your voice or increase the volume of your voice just a little bit. Doesn't have to be much, just a little bit. Play with the space around you, just a little bit more. Energy. Right? If you walk into work like you really don't want to be there, try like you want to be there. I think Dr. Natalie Flatt said something about how to set your day up right. Things like this. You've got all the answers today from this session. You know, you can play with that. So, that's how you navigate as an introvert. 8 types of questions. I don't have time to go into all 8, but one of the couple of things that I do, let me look at my notes, because there's, yeah, I don't have time to go into all of them, but actually, you know what? Can you come find me at Networking Drinks and I'll tell you all of them, okay? One of the things, and I'll share this with you because it's late in the day and I'll fix it out of the video, is I can use a question to provoke emotion. So I could say something like, what are you, an idiot or just a jerk? Emotion, right? You can play with these tools in certain ways that'll help you get results. So find me and I'll send you the article that's got the 8 list, and I'll share it with you. You know, anything you want to know, please find me and I'll share. Because the more I share, it becomes more impactful for you to do advancing the future of work, which is important because we all have to live in this world. So yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't answer all your 8 questions, but hopefully that's just one key thing. 8 questions. Navigate. How do you empower others to be self-sufficient? I would start from the end. What makes you think they're not self-sufficient? You know, how much effort are they calling on you? What are they doing that's draining your resources, time, energy, availability, right? I would start there and then I'd think about, okay, I'd brainstorm that and say, how can we sort of do things differently here? So it might even be set up a client portal, an internal client portal. You might already have this, but if you're still facing this challenge, it's probably not effective enough. So go in and seek feedback around it and you'll find the answers. Now more than ever, people are willing to share their frustrations with the world. You know, so you can easily, just by opening that door, and it is going to be confronting, open the door and just really sort of learn what's useful. I'm going to move quickly because we're running out of time almost, so that's just one way. Really look at the perception like, look, you know, this will take a lot of time and energy. How can we do things differently? Even asking that question, how can we do things differently? Massive in the world of work. Doesn't sound that obvious, but people are already in their roles and they're going 100 miles ahead. The organization's progressing. We've got challenges. We've got opportunities we need to make. The business is being driven at 100 miles an hour. Very few people go, hang on a second, can we just pause at the gas station and check in? How are we doing? You know, so that's one way to do it. I'm happy to share more ideas with you if you catch up with me at networking. So yeah, how do you understand where people are at? Couple of things. Remember I put up the Think, Look, Communicate framework, the look, right? Can you tell if someone's not right, like at work? Some of the signs are visible, right? A lot of them aren't because we are so good at masking up, aren't we? You know, so, you know, one of the things is just look for those signs, be cognizant, be aware of those things, right? Whenever I tell my friends that I'm having a rough day, they go, what are you talking about? What are you having a rough day for? You know, because I've always been that big, bright level of energy for them, they forget that I'm human too. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of us forget at times too. We're human. The people that we're dealing with are also human. And if you can have 2 humans come together to have a good conversation, beautiful things happen. The horror story. Have I got 5 minutes, Ruben? I think I've got 1 minute. Okay, great. Let's.
You've got 5.
I've got 5? Okay, I've got 5. Sorry, is that 5 or 1? 5. Okay, great. Okay. Human. Give them a big round of applause, eh? How good are the RE team today? They've done a fantastic job. Okay, horror story. All right, so I'll wrap this up real quick. I was on stage here and I was on a panel. I don't do panels because you get shot. You know, and so I got the questions ahead. I knew exactly what I was saying, and I've got to tell you, I was doing well up here. You know, it was right here. I was on one of those seats, right? I was doing well. And then everyone was on their phones, like doing this vote, take a poll here, take a poll there. And so I asked this question of the audience, and I say, wait, before you answer this question, don't pick up your phones. We're humans. Let's just do this interaction thing, right? I'm going to scan the room, and if you agree with what I say, nod yes. If you don't agree with it, just shake your head no. All right, I'm scanning. So all these people, you don't have to nod your head, it's okay, right? Impact influence. So yeah, so I'm scanning, yep, great. So I think most of us are in agreement of that. The other panelist is shaking her head. The panel member, the panel, the person hosting the panel host goes, oh, you're shaking your head. She goes, yeah, I'm just replying to the room, you know, I saw so many people shaking their head. Oh, I didn't see anyone shaking their head. The next person goes, to be fair, I saw both. The CEO goes, well, okay, yeah. In that moment, instant credibility gone. And I was also the closing keynote speaker at that conference, right? Now I've like maybe 10 seconds to regain the room. So I told another story that made me, like, I shared it with you today, I got shot on stage. So the story I said was like, it was about how tough it is as a professional speaker trying to do events like this and how they're really, you know, critical audiences. You have to get your stuff right. 86 hours for this presentation, you know, it doesn't sound like much, but research, rehearsal, calibrating. Today, all day I've been calibrating the energy just to make sure I hit it right, you know, and not be perceived as something I'd rather not mention on camera. So, you know, so there's a whole bunch of work and that pressure gets to you. And so I said, you know, it's been crazy. The minute I hop off stage, I get shot from feedback. People are so critical, they rip me apart. The things that people have said to me, oh my God, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So I said that. And then after I made this kerfuffle, the host says, what have you learned from today's experience? And I've learned, thank you everyone for sharing this with me, because this is the first time I've been shot on stage. You know, instant claps and everyone laughed and it was great. And yeah, they stayed for my session. So that's just one horrific story. And I hope that entertains you. So it's crazy. But, you know, I chose this life. This is how we roll. Okay, so I'm going to close now with a lesson from the most influential band in the world, the Beatles, or more precisely, the Lady Beatles. This is one of my friends from Adelaide, the short-haired girl, never mind. One of them is a friend of mine. She got me through Year 12 English. I'm forever grateful, because back in those days, my English was, how you say, not very good looking. So she got me through Year 12 English. And she was always talking about the Beatles, and when she grew up, she found a tribute band, and they did amazing things. And in fact, last year was the 60th anniversary of the Beatles coming to Australia. And when the City of Adelaide wanted a band to do it, they chose my friend's band, the Lady Beatles. And so I was thinking, isn't it amazing that 4 lads from Liverpool, England, transcended time and space and generations to impact and influence 4 girls from Adelaide, South Australia? And it turns out the answer to that question lies in one of their songs. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to play it for you now. So, get the mic. Alrighty. And I need a bit of help on this one. So Matthew, ladies and gentlemen, and others, give him a big round of applause. Outgoing president. Cool. Just click the slide when yeah, cool. Awesome. Right. Here we go. Top tip, don't wash your guitar in hot water. Alrighty, let's see if this works. All right, cool. All right, so the song is called Twist and Shout. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you sing. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. And the way I play it is slightly different. So the way I play it is like this. First, you start with the bass. Then you have the drums. Then you got the guitar. Vocals, shake it up, baby, now. Twist and shout. Come on, come on, come on, come on, baby, now. Come on, work it all out. Ooh, work it all out now, honey. You know you twist so fine. Come on and twist a little closer now. Now you know that you're mine. Woo! So here's the lesson. Each one of those instruments by themselves sounds alright, right? But it's only when they come together and play the same song, what's on the same page, is that four lads from Liverpool, England, can transcend time and space and generations to impact four girls from Adelaide, South Australia. That is the highest lesson of impact and influence I'd like to leave you with. So here's the key takeaway for all of you. Inside your own organizations, it can sometimes feel like you're just that one instrument and you're playing one song. But imagine what would happen if you found other instruments inside your organization and you all came together to have a bit of a jam session and you played the same song. What impact and influence could you create inside your organization? So this is what I want to leave you with today, because I've shared with you the principles of impact and influence that you can all take home and use back at work. Think at the point of impact. Look like the trusted source. And finally, move people from where they're at, not where you're at. Bring them along on the journey. And that, my friends, is impact and influence. Matthew, change the slide, man. Thank you. My name is AJ Kulatunga. Thank you so much for having me here today. Whatever happens in business and in life, I wish you nothing but success. Take care and go make tomorrow better than today.
Well, I don't really know what to say after that. Can you please all join me in thanking AJ for what was an entertaining session?